Terry, will you call the meeting to order with a roll call vote, please?
Mack,
Here.
Rottinghouse,
Here.
Dyke,
Here.
Freund,
Here.
Berglund.
Janice is on mute.
She is here, though. Janice, are you here? Yep, she's waving.
Okay, and Rosiska absent.
Reading of the district mission vision statement by Director Berglund. I'm not sure if she's there, if you can get it or not. We can't
Yep,
hear her.
unmute, Janice.
Is she muted? Okay, can you unmute her?
Can you hear me now?
We got you on your iPad and your phone, I think.
I'm on. I think you should have someone else do it because I'm having technical difficulties.
I'll read it.
Josh, I can read it.
Lucy, go for it. Thank you so much.
Our mission, regardless of who you are or what your story is, you can learn and be loved here. Our vision, creating compassionate, competent problem solvers. And our operating principles, information for one is information for all. No surprises, verify facts, think ahead, disagree, explain your thinking, and then commit.
Very much. Agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do we have any edits, changes, or corrections?
No changes.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. We have a motion and a couple seconds to approve the agenda as presented. Any? All those in favor say aye.
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 The same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 4, welcome visitors for comment. We are here in the high school library, and we don't have any public visitors for comment unless we have 2 gentlemen here who know from both of them. Mr. Dorr, do we have anybody online? We don't have anybody online. Okay. Then we'll move on to agenda number 5, comments by board members and superintendent.
First comments from the superintendent, strategic goal 1 of equity and achievement. We have been, and we have a full presentation about this tonight, we have really been working hard as a staff, as an entire school family with our students, really upping our game academically. And I've said over and over, in the next few years, I want Charles City's reputation to be an academic powerhouse. And we're going to talk about how test scores had really got us in a dark spot. And we just know we can do better. And I'm really excited to share about what we're doing differently. It's not easy, and some of it's been very painful at times, but we also know with growth comes pain. It's kind of like weightlifting. You know, you're sore, you're tired, and sometimes it's really frustrating, but in the end, you're healthier and you're stronger. And that's what we're going through as a school family right now, both our students and our adults. But I'll tell you, there's some proof in the pudding already. Brian Jerns later tonight will share some great news about our ACT test scores. And our ACT test scores have improved even in the midst of a pandemic. And that just is really outstanding. So, and we have a presentation tonight from our equity team on some of the work we've been doing with equity. So I'm excited to have Jenna Hagelin, who's one of our staff leaders on that work as well, on our strategic operations that we're doing there. Strategic goal 2 of culture and climate. It's hiring season. We're in the midst of some really big hires with our early retirement policy this year. We had vacancies come out sooner. So we are in the midst of hiring several teachers, several head coaches, and 2 of our senior leader positions. We were doing interviews tonight for our new re-envisioned activities director, which is our executive director of student engagement and leadership. And so we also expect to do director of finance interviews here at the end of the month, and then also many of our teaching positions. So that is always an exciting time because hiring is one of my favorite things. It's when we really add to our family and make us even stronger. And finally, strategic goal 3, facilities and infrastructure. We've been doing some extensive work on some facility strategic planning, even working with some of our community partners, talking about what's possible in partnerships, whether it's the city, the county, the YMCA, other TLC. We're constantly in those communications. And so we're, redoing even more efforts to do a long-term 10 to 20 years planning. We'd really done 5 to 10 years, and now we're advancing that 10 to 20 year range. So it's a stair-step process. And I really believe in the next 2 months, so we'll have even more to share off the board and the work we're doing there. So that is the update from the district.
I just wanted to say that the Old Time Radio show was very fun. I wasn't able to listen to it on the radio, but I did watch it on the webpage, and that was fun, and it was good and professional as always.
Me too.
I especially like the accents. They did a very good job.
Great, thank you. Any other board members? Well, the one comment I'll make is about strategic goal 3, talking about facilities and infrastructure. On this agenda, we have an item for this particular building, which, as you all know, is needing lots of updates. And so I guess we probably need to have some long-term plan around what we're going to do with that, with this building, and how we're going to make it habitable and good for our students. So just something for us to talk about in the future. Let's move on to agenda number 6, committee reports. I think we only have one, Director Ridinghouse. Congratulations, you are the one.
Oh, yay. We had a meeting last Friday at my favorite time of the morning, 7 o'clock. And pretty much what we talked about was just some new money and what we thought we projected, what we thought would happen, and talked about the importance of giving money to the campuses to be able to explore new ideas, which goes along with the mission and vision. So from the ISL money, we're talking about some of that money going to each campus building. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. No, I think
Interest-based bargaining.
Oh, yes. And on February 15th, we're going to have a celebration. We voted at the previous board meeting to pursue the interest-based bargaining. And so on February 15th, I believe, we're going to have a celebration with the other partners besides us, the support staff and the teachers, to talk about what a good thing that is, that it's not contentious. It's all of us working together for the same goal. So,
great point. Thank you. Great. Move on to agenda number 7, the COVID update, which is a reoccurring theme on these agendas.
It is a reoccurring theme. Things are a lot healthier than they were, I would say, back around Thanksgiving, but they're trending, unfortunately, in the wrong direction. And as I said before Christmas, I really, really want to get us back fully open. Was very optimistic we could do so. Right before we came back to school, we actually hit a low of somewhere it was the low 9s or high 8s, I believe. Then we came back to school to tick back up right away. We crossed 10% that workshop day that we had coming out, and we're back up over 14% again today. So working with public health, talking to Gail Argis, continually, and her recommendation was late last week that, likely to stay in hybrid the next couple of weeks, because we are going to see a post-Christmas spike. And obviously she has a lot of information with that, and it seems to be out in the community. We don't have a lot of people out in our staff, but we're starting to see an uptick here and there. We had a few staff members that had it over Christmas, and they're starting to come back. But it's something we're keeping our eye on. So we are functional. We had a couple of absences at our middle school today, for example, but we were fully staffed with subs. So that's good news. But that, as we know, can get really hairy really quickly. Again, we just implore our community, continue to do the right thing. We want to get open. We're optimistic for it. I still believe there's a chance either into January, beginning of February, we can get fully open. I'm making the board aware of this. There is a lot of chatter throughout the state that possibly the legislature or the governor may take action to really limit our ability possibly to use hybrid even. And so with that being in mind, we are already preparing for that the governor could just order us back fully open at any point as well. Although I believe that would take an act of the legislature to do that. But it's pretty widely reported in the news right now that that is her preference. So again, we're preparing for that. We're sticking with our matrix, and I feel really strongly about that. And being a good baseball umpire, I always knew this: if nobody was happy, I was probably doing my job. And I can tell you one thing about our matrix: sometimes our matrix doesn't make anybody happy. There's some people frustrated right now that our matrix isn't allowing us to get fully open. I hear you. I get it. And sometimes I wonder that too, because as I walk through our schools, seems like we probably could be fully open, but again, we have a matrix, we have numbers, and public health's giving that advice. But on the flip side of that, I can tell you at our worst, when we were approaching 23, 24%, the matrix of positivity in the county, the matrix was the only thing keeping us open at all. We could have been fully remote. So the matrix, as much as it's frustrating for people in the community, keeps us grounded. It keeps us kind of even keeled and level. And so again, we're fully open at hybrid. And we're not full remote. So I believe the matrix is doing its job. However, I do believe in the future, the governor could come out with some new guidance that could possibly make the matrix maybe irrelevant at some point as well. So I just want the board to be prepared for that, the community to be prepared for that. Whether the matrix gets us open, whether the state has us open, I believe that's probably near in our future. So that's pretty much what we have to share at this point.
Great, thank you. So you've worked with Public Health and they are supportive of this, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They're supportive of our matrix. They're supporting us being a hybrid right now. They're really concerned if we were fully open, it might exacerbate the spike. But Gail, Public Health are very, they're sympathetic to us. They know we want to be fully open. We know that's, what's best for kids in the long run and just doing the best we can. Our school to U numbers are the lowest they've been. We're seeing more people tick back to school. I think last week I heard we were 211. And we were nearly 300 at one point. So we're starting to see school to U numbers come back down, more kids back on campus as well.
Do we have any projected date that the governor might move that idea of hers forward?
We, just reading the news reports, and honestly, I wish I had some inside knowledge. I don't, I just read what's in the newspaper. I was reading, I believe, the Ames Tribune, and I was reading the KCRG out of Cedar Rapids, and they were saying it would be discussed by the legislature. Speaker Grassley was saying that it would be discussed pretty quickly in the legislature. So it just seemed like it was a top priority.
Well, they started session today, didn't they?
They did.
10 o'clock, is that right?
Sometime like that, yes.
All right, board members, any questions? I think we really appreciate you working with Public Health and keeping us informed on what's going on. And it's good to see that people are, ready to come back and we're working really hard to do that. So I think those are all positive things. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 8, school board equity learning. This was a very exciting and different learning opportunity than we've had in the past.
It was a little more targeted. It was a little pretty intense. She's an intense woman, which I appreciated about. A little bit of salty language in there, so apologize if any ears were offended. But I believe it was something that is very prevalent. And for the background, this was a Fox News sports reporter that has worked on teaching basically training with young male athletes about sexual violence. And a lot of it, in her mind, starts with the culture that is sometimes found in male locker rooms. And so sexism is very broad. I mean, it could be as much as a joke about, maybe a woman's ability to drive or stature in the community, as broad as that, to like this is very targeted. And I thought it was a good one for the board to see because it's something we work with, with our young male athletes, our young female athletes and our staff about some cultural pieces. So again, I asked the same questions: what surprised you, what grabbed you, and what do you see yourself doing differently based on the learning that you had?
Get us started. So I have 2 daughters, and so watching this made me think a lot about growing up and how just generally males have acted towards females, and recognizing that now that my life has changed, how that makes a significant difference for me as an outlook, and wanting to make sure that they're successful and don't have to endure some of those things that she talked about. I thought that she did a really nice job of telling a story that I thought was very impactful And you know, the story she told about the young man that she was talking to, and he had made some, you know, a derogatory comment, and she had asked him, you know, who told him he could do that, and you know, got him thinking that his whole life had been directed by other people, influencing his direction and his path and his success and what it meant to be, you know, a young male in athletics. And whether, you know, he really recognized it afterwards or not, he really seemed to be touched by her comment and wanted to make a positive impact and recognize what he had done maybe wasn't the right direction for him and was going to change his trajectory. I thought she had some really powerful things to say and very impactful. She had a really unique approach about dollars, and you know, how you spend your money often talks about what you think is important in your life. And she, you know, different areas in the world, how they could affect change by using their money to influence whether you partake in a particular organization or not. You know, from the NFL all the way down to, you know, our K-12 level, which I thought was a really interesting way to approach it. And that she had started, you know, a young organization at the age of 18 and was heavily involved with, you know, I don't know if this is the right term, but empowering women. What's that?
Empowering.
Just feel, you know, that this was not acceptable behavior and that they should work with men to change, and saying that, you know, that men are not only the cause, but they're also the cure of this particular situation. That, you know, she was speaking, I think, from a woman's perspective, that they need men to be participatory in the resolution of this as much as they've been in the problem area. So I talked a lot. What did you guys think?
Well, you covered it.
Well, I really liked in her talking about how she was presenting to the young male athletes, and her husband actually gave her the idea of, you know, you need to make this personal, because I think it's so true that a lot of kids are desensitized to, you know, all of the sexual music and images, and just that whole mentality that is part of that culture that they talked about. And so making it personal by having pictures of their, you know, sisters, their mother, women that they knew, and putting those faces up there and saying, you know, 1 in 4 of these women will be, you know, a victim of sexual violence. And I think that's what hits home, is you have to have that personal aspect to it, or it's just another statistic to them. And I really liked that she built that into her presentations, and her, you know, working with these young male athletes to get them to really think about, you know, it's not just a statistic. These are the people that you know, the women that you know. And I also, what grabbed me, or I liked that she said, Josh, when you were talking about, you know, using your money to influence the situation, and she said, you know, how huge would it be if you know, major sports teams made that decision, that if you are an athlete that has a you know, sexual violence conviction or accusation on your record, we don't want you. And if that's the norm, if that becomes the norm in major league sports, imagine what a huge difference that might be. Imagine how much people might think more about their actions and what they're doing when they're in high school or they're in college, and that's the culture that they're, you know, used to and around, and it's acceptable right now.
Well, and every time a college player from Iowa is arrested or charged with a sexism type of an offense, I mean, it just makes headlines, and it does not bode well for the college. It does not bode well for the state, and it is not good on their reputation. So somehow we need to continue her conversations to put a stop to that kind of thing, whether you're an athlete or not.
Right.
I think
I
that
think, I
the
think to
point
her
that-
point though, is she, you know, that she was making is that, yeah, they make headlines, but yet one of those players might still be, you know, if we're in this
Correct.
case talking about athletics specifically, one of those players might still be signed by a major league, you know, baseball team or an NFL football team or something along those lines. And so it's almost like they're saying it's okay if that's part of your past. And I really appreciated the fact that she said that she's
Right.
kind of making that call to action.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the language was blunt. The
Mhm.
language was up front, but sometimes, I mean, I was okay with it. I don't know if our high school students would be able to watch that TED Talk without a permission slip from parents in the building, but it was truthful.
Well, and I think whether we want to admit it or not, our students, even our middle school students, are hearing that kind of talk anyway. You know, yeah, I know what you mean about
But
having it be in school,
for them to hear it
in
from
school.
us in school, we would have to jump through all kinds of extra hoops
Yeah.
for permission.
It reminded me again of how prevalent that kind of talk and behavior really is. I mean, when I was working at the school, I was well aware of it, you know, but you get away and you forget, you know, and I think it's as large a problem as many other problems that we have in our world today.
well, particularly when it comes from a leader who says, well, it's just locker room talk. Well, it's hurtful.
Right.
Or
I
boys
put- I
be
like-
boys
Yeah.
drives me crazy.
I liked the comment that she made at one point in there where she said, I think she said something about how this isn't a woman, a female problem or a male problem. This is a human problem. And I think that's the same with all of these different, you know, learning opportunities that we've had at the board table. These are all human problems. They, you know, they all start with each of us. They're not just specific.
Right. We're not pointing fingers at anyone except ourselves.
Right.
We all need to do what we can about it.
Yep.
I thought it was good. I even went further and looked at her website. There's a few excellent documentaries on there. And so I'm hesitant to say what I learned which place, but it was really good.
Anybody have any other comments they want to make? Oh, it was a really good discussion. It was a very, very different than what we've done in the past. Very interesting, though.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for bringing that video to us.
Yeah. I guess the only thing that I would like to say is that even though this is about athletes, it permeates other areas of the school too, besides athleticism. And so I hope that, you know, if we do educating, we do it for all students.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Our research shows us, we've seen this and we're narrowing it even down in our schools, is that there oftentimes are places in our facilities and places where oftentimes women don't feel comfortable going, and we have to make sure that we identify those and again, fix that. And so that, you know, absolutely, whether it's a locker room, bathroom, hallway, whatever, we have to be very attuned to that.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 9, equity strategic planning.
I'm really excited to introduce Jenna Hagelin tonight, and Sherry Meza, one of our teacher leaders, is just out sick today, unfortunately, and so keep thinking about her. Really excited. As you know, we've been on this this strategic planning journey and work of executing equity and equitable outcomes for all kids, you know, aligned to our regardless mission. And we keep getting better at that every day. One of the things we've done is we have an awesome equity warrior team that's just really championing this work. And from that, Jenna and Sherry have risen up as two of the leaders of that team. Well, I've actually been able to step back a little bit, be more of a supportive and participatory role. And Jenna and Sherry have really led much of this. We spent a good 5 or 6 hours in strategic planning on Friday. Asked Jenna to come along and just give us an update on what we're doing with our equity activities. We got some cool stuff happening with some kids and all rolling on the work we're doing.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. The group is about 14 people at this point of equity leaders. And then Sherry and I have agreed to step up and be leaders of those leaders, just to kind of help Mike out, formulate the plan that he's already started and continue it forward. So this happened, the team of us started meeting this fall in 2020, and we really started coming up with what is equity, what does this need to look like in our organization as far as strategic goal of the equity and achievement plan. So that is where we started. And then as we progressed, we've identified a couple different agencies that seem to really fit the niche that we were looking for. One of them was the Equity Literacy Group. And on Monday, January 4th, we met with Marcella Debuse, and she started the process. It was a 5-hour group planning time during our professional development day, in which all of us got together and really started to formulate, what does this vision need to look like? What does the vision of equity need to look like within our district? We started that planning, and it was overall, I think the concept was really positive, but today we talked with our leaders of equity, and we need more is what the conclusion we came to. We realized as a district, we are way ahead of maybe where some other districts are in terms of our mission and visionary planning abilities, where some educational districts are more at like a 101 level. We're at more of a 501 level. We are kind of ahead of the curve. So we spent a lot of time that January 4th really talking about things that were kind of beneath us in terms of understanding, like we were ahead of the curve, even to the point that at one point we brought up our mission statement as part of, there's a lot of equity in our mission statement. And so do we start there? So we are going to go back to equity literacy and just talk to them about, hey, these are some of the ideas that we have. We feel like we're further ahead of the curve. Do we need you to be ahead of the curve with us? The next step for us is actually next week. We have Harvey and his crew coming in, and they're going to be doing a bias training. So what we've done is we've actually identified several parents and students that we would like to work with. And it's about 12 kids of diversity, very, very diverse group of kids that we are going to be reaching out to. There is an initial parent meeting on Tuesday, the 19th. And then on Thursday, the 20th or 21st, there will be an actual training for the students on bias training. And so I've reached out to Harvey's group, and we've gotten some additional information from them on what that's going to look like and how we're going to get that group going. There's also a subgroup within our team of 14 that's going to be continuing to work on the bias training. So what we started last Monday, they're going to continue that. And then as a group, we're going to get back together and focus on what does our vision need to be? What are we presenting to our community? How do we have these difficult conversations with our parents and our students? And listen to what they're saying, get the feedback that we need to get in order to move forward. And we don't have all the answers, and that's not our job to have the answers. It's really at this point really listening to what are the needs of our community and our students and our parents, so that we can come up with next steps. So with equity, what are we needing to focus on? What are we needing to really process and communicate to everybody when it comes to our curriculum, when it comes to our athletics, when it comes to the things in the school, the society of the school, the social groups, all of the things that we know are a part or make up the school. Are we doing the right job? Are our policies in the right place? Is our communication in the right place? So these are questions that we have and we don't have the answers to, but we're wanting the answers to it because we feel at this point in time, it's just a matter of listening and getting those answers. So I guess that's where we're at right now. Do you guys have questions? Do you have things that you think we as a group need to be doing that maybe I haven't said, or that you haven't heard, or that you want us to be doing?
I have maybe just a couple of quick questions. So at the end there, you kind of talked a little bit about, questions that we don't have answers for. So if the group gets together and talks about, something the school district is doing maybe doesn't seem like the right fit for our district, and we want to, and your group says, we really want to make a change. We want to invoke a different thought. What's the process for your group to be able to affect that change?
Well, I will tell you, change does not happen in a vacuum. So it's not a one shoe fits all kind of mentality. And I will tell you, you guys are our biggest advocates. The board is our biggest advocates. You guys are our biggest sounding board. So as it obviously it's going to depend on what that change looks like, but you guys are the ones that we really need to process with and talk to and think about, hey, is this something we can or can't do right now? Change is not going to happen overnight. Change may not happen within the next year. Overall, like, this is a process, and so we really want to be open to what that looks like. And again, the biggest thing I think we're at right now is just listening to what that needs to be and then coming back and having the conversation, whether that's 1 time, 10 times, 15 times, I don't care. It's just, we have to start having that conversation. So, but again, you guys are our biggest advocates. So I would say the board is going to be our primary go-to if there's something big, in terms of respect to what's going on. The other side is we need to talk to staff. We need to talk to administrators. We need to talk to leaders. None of this is going to happen just because we want it to happen. It's going to happen because it can happen, and it's out of respect to everything that's going on that maybe even the group doesn't even recognize that's happening.
And part of the messy work that we're in right now is actually building the vehicle to get to equity. It's one of those things where, the 14 of us could have just been do-gooders and just started running down the road, and you could do that, but it's really inefficient, and it's really not overly effective. So for example, we all have a passion for equity. We could have immediately started having, these tough conversations with staff to confront their own inequities, and that would be a disaster. I've seen it happen before where people aren't trained, people don't have the empathy, people will actually make people worse. People have to be in a really healthy spot to confront areas of growth in their own life. And the people that are helping them guide that journey have to be very, very highly trained. So that's much of the work we're doing right now, is figuring out what that work looks like, building the capacity of this team, building policy. We're working on, I know Missy and Pat, we've been working on that for over, a good portion of the year of scrubbing our equity policy, building that capacity. And also the one thing that Jenna, is part of as well is we are going through equity assessments right now. We are actually hopefully going to do some focus groups, but COVID's got to get better because we need to do this in person. We are equity literacy. The consultant group we're working with is currently going through all of our student handbook policies and are going to make recommendations on how we could correct some of our policies. So you're seeing some of these systemic things. And while they're not as necessarily, it's like the iceberg. This is the stuff below the surface, and we want to see the stuff above the surface. But unfortunately, it's the path you have to travel. You have to build the foundations to the house first. And so, like I said, it's that vehicle so we can go faster, be aligned. And like we've said, this is not a one-shot thing. This is a forever thing for us. This is a journey, and it'll never end. It's a constant battle to get to equitable outcomes for all kids, regardless of who they are.
I just have a quick question. The 14 that are in this group, are they a mix? And maybe I missed that. Is it a mix of staff, administration? How did you come up with the 14 and kind of what do they represent in the district?
Well, and Mike, I'll tap into that one. It is a mix of, there is 2 principals. Mike is a part of it. Pat is a part of it. We have teachers, we have librarians, we have school counselors, myself, at-risk coordinator. So yeah, it is a pretty diverse group of individuals that are a part of it. Mm-hmm.
Great.
I have a para-educator too.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we recognized on Monday during our training is also maybe encompassing some students as part of it at some point. So we're doing this bias training next week. So we're hoping to identify maybe some students that would want to step up in more of a leadership position in terms of just helping us with some of the visionary piece of it. And they even talked about creating some visuals and things like that, just so that they feel definitely a part of the process.
The one thing we're very conscious and aware of is that not putting people that experience the inequity in a situation where they feel like they have to fix it. So for example, sexism, how females may feel less than males, that's not a female issue. Now, I know our presenter also said that it's a human issue, but really it's a male issue. Males created systemic pieces to oppress women at times. And so I'm always cautious to invite people that are feeling that inequity to be the ones that kind of feel like they're having to fix it. So that's why we've been very cautious with our kids. We don't want to feel like they should come in and walk in and like, oh gosh, this is the thing I'm experiencing, but you want me to fix it? That seems kind of odd. That's like asking the prisoner to, fix the prison system, and that's not what we're meaning to do. But there's a balance, there's a tension to that people that feel that, like, I will never know what it's like truly with full empathy to feel what it's like to be a woman, because there's just some things that I'll be unable to feel. And so there's a piece like having a female come into a male dominated group to give their opinion and their point of view is very, very powerful too. So that's something we have to balance.
I would say part of how the group kind of came together is that it's people who sort of have a passion for this area. Wouldn't you say that, Mike?
Absolutely. And so there's a people around our district that have had passion for this for several years. And so it's nice to get a group of people in. What's nice about it too is we're able to push and prod a lot faster when you have like-minded people with this. But also knowing too, one of my mantras is, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. So this group of people also, even though they want to go fast, have to figure out how to bring everybody else in our family to go along with them at the same time.
Well, and I'll add to that too, Mike, that we're also looking at teaming with Storm Lake. So, other districts that are kind of in the similar place that we're in, just trying to really team around other people that can not only make us stronger, we can make them stronger, but then we also look at us, like, how are things working? What's not working? And being open to that feedback and suggestion. We're not shy to it in terms of what's working, and if it's not working, what do we need to change?
We're excited. I had a conversation with the Storm Lake superintendent, and again, we're in a formal partnership with them as well. And we're both in our calendar task force right now to develop calendars for the next year. And we made an agreement to make sure that our professional learning days align. So that way we can share more resources and do things, on Zoom, or maybe even visit each other when COVID maybe gets better. But then we just have that capacity to have a sister brother district that we could share resources with and share expertise and capacity with. And maybe even share some of the training, so it's a little cheaper for us too. So being cost.
I know when we were participating in the school board convention back in November, and they had a number of sessions and even breakouts dealing with equity. And from what I got from people having conversations and the conversations, everything that was going on during those meetings was the feeling that we were farther ahead than most other districts and even discussing this and moving forward. So Jenna, your group is doing great, I think, and keep having the conversations, because the conversations are the first step to breaking down all of the barriers that we may have out there dealing with equity. And as we continue this journey, we will tear down some of those walls of inequality in various aspects in our district and among our people. So just keep up the good work.
Thank you, Scott. I will tell you, just as a caveat, I've had a couple conversations with students about what's happening right now. And they actually are excited to hear that their district is having these, that the adults in this district are having these conversations. They think that they're the only ones, teenagers that think this way or believe this way. So just as qualitative information, they're very excited to hear that adults actually care enough to have these conversations. So it's been really, really nice to see that from the students as well.
Sounds like you're on top of it.
Well, thank you so much, Jenna. We really appreciate you coming tonight and sharing this with us. This is really good information.
Absolutely, and I will be more than happy to share again as we move forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jenna.
Let's move on to agenda item number 10, instructional vision and, instructional vision and instruction.
Let's share my screen.
Two gentlemen who look like they might have matched their outfit today. I can't tell for sure. They're very close.
We text each other in the morning just to double check.
I mean, the shirts are close. I think Mike's kind of checkered maybe, or
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't get the text.
Joe's is not. Joe's is just a solid.
No, mine is checkers.
Oh, is it?
Well,
Yeah,
these
it's
are-
just,
we're
it's
very
hard to see.
similar.
Yep.
A little tighter.
And Brian got the tie right, but he forgot the
I wore-
shirt.
Well, I wore a tie.
All right.
Now you gonna leave us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So people wonder why I'm looking around the floor, my wedding ring fell off my finger, so I'll just make sure I don't lose it. So I'll find that after the board meeting. So it does that sometimes. I need to get resized. Well, anyway, thank Brian, thank Joe for coming along. We just thought it was time to just another update on our instructional vision and learning expectations update for our board, for the community. And we casted the new vision for passionate, confident problem solvers. And what I love about our vision right now is, and a vision, just reminders, our picture the future that inspires passions, where we're striving to go. And what I'll tell you is, most places like to create a vision statement. It's just something nice you put on a coffee mug. It's just something nice on a sign. And here we live it. We live it every day. And that means at times it's hard, it's messy, it's challenging, it's difficult, but we know we're moving towards something better and we're moving together. And so today we just want to give some time to kind of talk about an update. I know we've had a lot of questions from kids and community and our parents. I just want to give some clarity around that. So first of all, our success criteria today will be this, and we're using success criteria because we'll talk about how we use that to be more visible in our learning. One, I will be able to understand how our schools are raising expectations for all students. You're going to hear that consistently. One of the big things we've done is raise the bar of expectations for our kids. And really, when we say creating compassionate, competent, the expectations on them, problem solvers, they can take ownership of the work. Number two, I'll be able to understand how rigor is increasing to better prepare our students. And I'll talk about rigor here in just a minute. Rigor is really important. It goes hand in hand with expectations. And finally, I will understand how this work aligns with our vision of creating compassionate, competent problem solvers. When I got here 3 years ago, and we talked about this my first year and my second year, of just how frustrated we were with some of our low academic achievement. And we knew that. It was reflective in our ACT scores. It was reflective in our Iowa test and our ISASC scores. And we had lots of reasons for that, and they're valid reasons, but at the end of the day, they're unacceptable. And we knew that we weren't serving kids the way we needed to. And it was reflective oftentimes even in our grades. A grade might say a kid had an A, but they weren't proficient in the state test. And it meant that we had overinflated some of our academic rigor within our classrooms. And so that's why we committed to our kids and our community through our mission of being a regardless school, regardless of who you are, what your story is, you can learn to be loved here. Well, we had to make sure you had to learn and that the learning expectations were preparing you. And I did so many community conversations. I still do that. I had one this week with another business owner last Thursday. And consistently I hear from business owners that some of the graduates they were getting weren't prepared for what they needed. And hearing what they wanted in terms of better problem solving, more authentic skills, more of those 21st century skills, the soft skills, how to dress, how to carry yourself, how to be punctual, how to drive appropriately, all these things that I heard from our business owners and talking to our higher ed, higher ed, we need some of these skills as well. And so as we evaluate ourselves, our test scores, our higher ed, our business owners, were telling us we had to make some adjustments. And so we knew that. So creating compassionate, common problem solvers was absolutely tied in to higher expectations and higher rigor. Now, what is rigor? Rigor is this: the ability to transfer the skills in useful ways. Say that again. Rigor is the ability to transfer the skills in useful ways. Great teaching doesn't just inform, it transforms. Let me give you a point. Pat, who was the first president of the United States?
George Washington.
Who was the 17th?
Rutherford B. Hayes.
I'd be curious. I don't know either. I have to look it up. Now, some people would say, well, that was a rigorous question, Mike. It's not a rigorous question. It's just a hard question. It's a good Jeopardy question. And you knowing the 17th president of the United States is not going to transform your life unless you're Ken Jennings and you're on Jeopardy. Rigorous teaching is how I can transfer the skills. Here's a great transfer of skills. When a kid in my band not only learns how to play the saxophone, but learns how to get along with other people that they don't always like and work collaboratively with them, how they learn to clean up the fast food restaurant on their way out when and be on time on the bus because we knew on time was late and early was on time. How I can take from the Comet Shop that we're doing here right now, real accounting skills as I build and understand apportion cost and overhead and how I have to have a profit to reinvest in the business on the Spirit Shop that they're doing. How I watch people using in FCS today in our foods classes, making recipes without actual measurements because that's something they have to do in real life. A lot of times it's a dash of this, a zest of this. It's not a teaspoon. And be able to take those estimation and inference skills and apply them in real applicable ways. That's rigor. We call it usability beyond the classroom. And I heard a great story the other day. Josh, if you buy a bike rack to put on your Jeep, that might be something you do someday, right? Mm-hmm. And you get it and you don't understand the instruction manual, how will you go and install the bike rack?
Probably go to YouTube, right?
You go to YouTube, right? Am I stealing something from you? Okay.
I already stole it. It's too late.
Yeah, exactly. So
Punchline.
he's gonna go to YouTube and look that up. But here's my question. Are you gonna stand in your garage on a Saturday afternoon, raise your hand, and hope a certified bike rack instructor answers your question? Because there isn't one. We have certified teachers in our classrooms, but their job is to facilitate and teach kids how to learn on their own and be I want to say efficacious, but that's a really big word. Really self-advocates, how they can advocate and fight for themselves. And we will help them. But what's interesting is if we ask a kid, How do you answer a question when you're out in the community? They'll go, I Google it. Well, how do you answer a question when you're in the classroom? Brian, what do they say?
Ask the teacher.
Ask the teacher. And that's the change that we're trying to get to in instruction. And we get it. It's messy, it's hard. And so I'm giving you the why. These fine gentlemen will give you the how.
That's kind of, he talked a little bit about that, so I'll jump in. You know, looking at the overall assessment of our district, we know we have some areas around ISAT scores, being below proficiency, you know, and that's kind of been a trend. ACT scores a little more high school specific, but just kind of gives us an indicator, have been on a downward trend now for a while. So this is, you know, this is our response. This is how we're hoping to address this. This is how we're hoping, and there's good research to back this. So I'll hand over to Joe, who will talk a little bit more on the what.
Yeah, so how we're addressing it is we're really making sure that the what is being taught in the classroom is strongly aligned to the standards. And when we do that, there's a couple different ways we would do that in the past. We would most of the time trust a curriculum that's been purchased or something along those lines, and then kind of backfill or make sure the standards are being addressed. We're really validating our curriculum that we're looking at purchasing, and that the curriculum that we have in our buildings right now. And then we're also just making sure that those standards, that we know them deeply as teachers and as administrators, we know what those standards are, and we know what they mean, and we know the level of which they're meant to be taught. An example, a math standard might be I can have a deep understanding of how to add and subtract fractions. In 5th grade, that level of understanding is at a DOK 2 or a DOK 1. But by 7th grade, that might be DOK 3 or 4.
What's DOK, Joe?
Depth of knowledge. So it's the rigor of which it needs to be taught and the knowledge that needs to be demonstrated. So if a teacher just read, I can have a strong understanding of adding and subtracting fractions, and it's rote memorization, that's DOK 1. But in reality, in 7th grade, they really need to be able to apply that. So having a deep understanding of our standards and making sure that we're teaching not just what, but what and to what depth and what extent, that's going to take us even further in making sure that we're doing the right work. Breaking that down one step further, we understand our standards. We also are attaching success criteria. Just like at the beginning of this presentation, success criteria are just like a breaking down of what that means to accomplish that target. I can, and usually it's in a day by day or a lesson by lesson format, which helps really bring that learning visible for the students. Should be directly connected to the practice work that's happening and the application, looking back up at the board and hearing the teacher talk about something. Oh yeah, by the end of this, I should be able to X, Y, Z. It kind of helps them take ownership as well and cross-check the teaching and the learning. And to be honest, it really helps as a teacher. I did this, and it really helped me stay on track to make sure that I was breaking it down and I wasn't getting off track. Our new curriculum that I had a chance to go with Mr. Jarens today to observe the new math curriculum in the high school, and the rigor that is happening in that was amazing. We talk about like aha moments that happen with students. I could count 7 aha moments that happened in 15 minutes with students as they were exploring and really diving deep. It wasn't easy. It certainly wasn't teacher-led. It was definitely student-driven. It was collaborative. And I'm like, yep. I mean, it seemed like it was a really great opportunity for kids to take ownership of the learning and explore. So as we explore new curriculum, we're really looking at curriculum that increases rigor, and it really addresses the student knowledge that we need to be at, and making sure it's on grade level. Because if our curriculum is not at the grade level that it should be, our teachers are teaching what they think is the right stuff at this level when it really should be here. And then our students, when they are successful, they're being successful here, but we need them to be successful here. And when they leave Charles City and they think they're successful because that's what we've been telling them, and then they go to the next level and then they're struggling and we never struggled before, that's us not doing our job to the fullest extent. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to match the rigor with curriculum. Authentic intellectual work. These are just opportunities that are going to match through projects and just like the stuff Mike was talking about, with authentic opportunities for students to apply the skills. Across the district, that's increasing, and we're going to continue to work on that. And we believe that all students can achieve, I mean, going right straight back to to our mission, they can learn and be loved. I want to say just learn, but learn at a high level. And I think the more we raise the expectations for what we need, what that means for a student, showing up and turning stuff in is not going to get you a passing grade around here. Like showing up, turning stuff in, applying my knowledge, and really working hard, asking questions, being an advocate, that's the stuff that we're looking for. So our curriculum, our standards, all that stuff is aligning to that rigor. And we're holding students accountable. I think that's another thing that that we're really helping them discover that they're good enough and they can do it, and then really letting them know when they fall short that we're here for them, but it's really, it's still for them to take on, and for the teacher to be a facilitator and for administrators to be partnerships in that. That's what we're doing. So it's a lot, but in the end, it's really just raising the bar.
So this is where the kind of, we can paint the picture of what we're doing, but it'd be, kind of a disservice to talk about that it's hard work. There's challenges in this. It's not easy. There's probably more growing pains more than anything. There's no doubt, right? When you talk rigor, when you talk higher expectations, when you talk standards, when you talk grade level standards, it's much more challenging. That's probably, we take kind of the hot topic, right? We talk a lot about our math curriculum at the high school. We had areas where we were more than a grade level behind in what we were asking students to do. And that showed. Where did that show? Our ISASS scores, right? The ISASS is a grade level score. The ACT is a grade level score. What colleges are requiring is grade level stuff. And we just weren't up to that challenge, or we weren't up to that spot. And so that's where, we're asking kids to work. We're asking kids to learn, right? There's a gap. We all know there's a gap from COVID. We all know there's a gap from just this curriculum deficit. And I know it's tough, and I know we kind of feel like, we should be, oh, take it easy, there's a gap. Well, we're never going to close the gap unless we kind of drive, right? Unless we keep moving. And so that's a tough one, right? It's the work and learning. It's challenging. There's no doubt it's harder. Expectations are higher than the past, right? This is as simple as like what we're asking kids to do in class, what we're asking kids to do at home. I think it really kind of became that, we have to learn all day. We have to learn not just, if we only learn in 42 minutes in a class period, we're going to fall really far behind.
Ryan, can you share the quote? You checked in with a high school parent and they told you what about their kids in math versus last year versus this year?
Yeah, no, I've been doing, and I'll kind of hit some of that, but I've been doing a lot of kind of just feeling around, like just asking, it's like, how are things going? And that is, I've heard this isn't just from one, this is from multiple, has said, there's no doubt it's harder, right? But they're learning more than they've ever learned in math. They've learned more in a semester. And one of them even said, last year was just a game of finish the worksheet and then take the test, finish the worksheet, take the test, finish the worksheet, take the test. This year it's, I actually have to understand it. And that's probably the focus. When we say learning, it's understanding. That's the DOK Joe talks about. It's just, I have to be able to understand it in order to do something with it. And that's how I know that I've mastered it, that I understand it. So yes, that's kind of a common one across the board. Expectations are higher, kind of covered that a little bit. Catching up to the new standard, that's that back up to grade level, right? We're getting back up to where we should have been. One of my favorite quotes I always talk, right? And this is kind of why we're here. I always talk modify versus support. This is kind of one of my favorite examples of it. Typically, we never want to modify, right? Every kid is capable of high levels. Every kid can do it. Some kids just need additional supports. The problem is, and I always use the time clock, and if anybody in the high school is listening, they're probably just shaking their heads. They've heard this 100 times. When we modify, so I have Josh, right? Josh shows up late to school today. He shows up, he's supposed to be there at 7:30. He shows up at 7:45. Do I go to Josh and say, Josh, you're looking a little tired. You showed up a little late today. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to have you show up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And your start time is now 8 o'clock rather than 7:30. What's probably going to happen to Josh within the next month? He's going to start showing up late. He's going to start showing up late again because I never actually fixed the issue. I never actually held him to a high standard and bought him an alarm clock and made sure to call him. Instead, I just modified his expectations. I actually lowered my bar of expectation for him. And that's some of what our curriculum has done because it's hard, right? Because it's hard, it's challenging. Rather than support them, rather than help them, we've just lowered that bar even further. Higher expectations equals more work. It's tough, right? They got to think. I know that's kind of one of the biggest things I've been working on with our students They're having to do stuff at home, right? To some of us that go, yeah, homework's homework. That wasn't really the case. That isn't what they're doing. That's where we're kind of graceful. They weren't doing as much at home. Obviously, the hybrid schedule has made this a bigger deal, right? There's a lot more stuff going on at home than ever just because they're home every other day. But even when we're back to full time, if we get to full time, they're still going to have stuff to do at home. This is probably the biggest one on the bottom. It's not perfect, right? Here's the thing. I've kind of gotten this thrown around a little bit. Like, well, I don't want my kid to be the guinea pig. I don't want my kid to try. The truth is what we're doing today is way better than what we were doing last year, right? I can tell you that honestly. I can tell everybody that. I can tell every parent that. So yes, it is still better than just what we had last year. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It'll never be perfect, right? That's what makes us good. That's what makes us better. That's what makes us a powerhouse, as Mike wants us to be. We continue to evolve. We continue to get better. Who are we talking to? We're talking to our students, right? We're talking, I'm going to tell you, in the next 2 weeks, I'm meeting with every student who had a failing or a D even at the high school, just to ask them what happened and really analyze, how can I help you, right? And that's kind of that thing. I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to save them. I'm going to just help them figure it out, right? What can you do different so you're not in this situation? That's the kind of feedback we need that we can bring back to our teachers, bring back as we look at our curriculum. Next steps, kind of talked a little bit about it. Student focus groups, we're working through those more on the secondary campus. Obviously, we're a little targeted anytime we start a new curriculum. And this is a big change. I'll tell you where it's probably the biggest change is the high school. We're truly trying to prepare them for their future, right? The cool part is, and I had a teacher point this out to me, we're no longer just teaching math, science, English, and social studies. We're teaching math with life skills. We're teaching science with life skills. We're teaching life skills that they're going to have to use for the rest of their life. Far too often, right? We have kids leave us, and 2 months later, they're falling over, right? They have nobody to save them. We're doing way too much saving and not enough coaching, not enough helping, not enough pushing them in a direction. We save too many kids. We're going to talk to our parents too. We know this is different. We know there are some parents out there who have been a little struggle, had some struggles with this. It's a little different at home when A, your kid does have to work more. B, your kid probably has a lot more questions. Some kids, right? We've seen it. Some kids that have always kind of gotten through with A's, always gotten through with B's, or even some kids with C's and D's who have just never had to try. They're having to try just to pass, right? And that's okay, right? We're not talking, if you remember the last board meeting, I talked about it's not impossible work. That's always kind of my key word. It's not impossible work. It's doable work. You just got to do it. And that's how we learn, right? Doing is learning. Learning is doing. We're going to continue to educate our students and community on our new vision. We definitely want to make sure that they understand this is on purpose, right? That sounds really mean and harsh. And sometimes I feel bad, like I'm being the jerk principal of being like, oh, tighten down. But this is for the right reason. We're doing this because we care about you, because we love you, and we want you to succeed. We can't keep having kids be unsuccessful after high school. Our main mission of the high school, and I would argue all the way down the district, is one thing: prepare kids for post-high school, prepare kids for a career, for a job, to be a citizen, whatever. Those are all the things we need to do and make sure all the systems align to that one. Last one is we are making adjustments, right? I can give you kind of a big one right now is, we're working with math, trying to get them, right? One of the comments we touched on a little bit, the aha moments. Because it's a process and it's not so much about a perfect right answer. It's not so much about a worksheet every day where I get a star at the top if I did them all right. We're working on how do we get them more feedback so they know they're on the right track or they're off. That's something that we're just learning as we go. The big one I'm happy of, right? It's preliminary. Our ACT scores are up. Hey, that's huge, right? That's a big one. That's a big one that feels good because guess what? We just had a pandemic. This is the group of kids that missed 4 months of school. And I would argue probably missed pretty much a semester. Guess what? Our ACTs are still looking good. Our ACTs are actually better than our average last year was right now. That's a big deal, right? It's preliminary. We'll see how it rolls out and how it continues. That makes me feel good, right? Unfortunately, in the high school, it's one of our weaknesses. We don't have a lot of indicators other than once or twice a year. That's kind of the hard part for us to do. That's why I don't have a lot of data other than, that's why I attach to something like ACT. I'm looking at who took it in November. I'm looking at who took it in December, seeing what their scores were. So that's where we're at. I'll tell you, this is the grind work, right? This is not the fun stuff, right? Quote, I think Mike said it before, this isn't sexy, right?
Coal mining.
Yep, it's coal mining. This is the work, but this is the work that's going to make Charles City, back to a powerhouse, right? Get up in that academic world. We can do better. Every kid can do better. I know it's tough. It's tough love at times, but we can do it.
Awesome. You know, I too have been interviewing students, and I've been asking the question, what's different now than it was at the beginning of the year or last year? And I've interviewed a lot of 7th and 8th graders because that's my clients. And one of the most profound statements that came from it happened to be a struggling student, said, in the past, I used to run to the help. I used to run to the teacher anytime I had any sort of problem. Now I know I can do it, and I know I have resources that I can go find the answers. And then I go ask for help. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that was from a 13-year-old. So we're doing it. We're doing it one lesson, one kid at a time.
And he hit this last time. We have to redefine what teaching and learning is. The old school of teaching is basically we open the kid's head like a lid, and the teacher then pours all the knowledge into their head. Well, we know that's not how learning is. Learning is about process. Learning is about experience. Learning is about authentic tasks. So instead of telling the kid the answer on Google, it might be showing them how to use their smartphone and use Google, or how to access YouTube, or how about this, teaching kids credible sources. Kids like to run to Wikipedia. It may or may not be credible. Instead of, that's the process and types of things that we're doing now. So that's why teaching looks differently. It's not going to be a teacher standing up in front of the whiteboard, giving all the base knowledge the kid needs to have. Now, there are some base knowledge things they do need to have. We understand that there are some processes that have to be there, but it's really the difference between fishing, teaching a person to fish, or fishing for them. We want to teach them to fish.
Do you have any questions for them?
I have a question. Does every student take the ACT?
Not every single. I'll tell you, we're at, I think last year, we're probably at about 70%.
Okay. So pretty much those who consider themselves college bound.
Yep, everybody who, I mean, it would, if you look at the range, it's anybody who's going to a 2 years. Some kids just take it to see where they're at.
Yeah.
Some kids use it if they're going to college.
Uh-huh. Okay, thanks.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I have a question when we're talking about the parent focus groups and student focus groups. How are you guys deciding who to reach out to for those? Tell us a little bit about that and kind of how you're choosing who to talk to and who to reach out to, or are you having lots of parents and students who are already reaching out to you, giving feedback?
We've had some reach out and give feedback. I'll tell you, students, it's just kind of been a continual thing. Parents, kind of my vision is just to get a kind of a mix, and I say mix of like how they did first semester, which level they're in, what was their path up. We kind of talk a lot about, we have kids that took algebra as an 8th grader. That's a different group. We want to get a nice mix of like, how's the experience for everybody? It's always a challenging curriculum, right? It's, one curriculum all the way across is kind of tough to do. That's why we vary a little bit. And it naturally happens just by classroom, but trying to get the most diverse group we can. That way, so we know, the kid who failed it, let's talk about it, right? Let's talk with that parent. The kid who got an A, who's my top kid? Let's bring them in. Let's have the same conversation about the same curriculum.
Thank you.
When we started the school year, and we've had parent-teacher conferences, have we gone through this type of information with students and parents to let them know that we expect this year to be harder or more challenging, and that we continue to work on this, and if people need assistance, they're made aware that they can ask, or that the guidance counselors or teachers are providing other means to assist students who may not be at the level that we think they should be.
Yeah, we've, speaking of high school, we've kind of put that all the way throughout the year. in the sense of, I mean, anything from a kid who's struggling, you know, really encouraging them. And I'll tell you, we've been encouraging, we have the gift right now of hybrid with some flexibility of time. We've really been encouraging them, come in and sit with your teacher. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the best person to sit with is your teacher, and we have that gift, so let's use that gift. I'll tell you, it's kind of hit and miss. You know, we can definitely encourage it. That's kind of that tough love piece of, you know, how do we get them there without completely just sitting them down? Because we want them to also kind of take responsibility, take some ownership in it. So it's one of those, you know, full disclosure. Did we encourage it 100%? Did we require it? Not really. We required our teachers to reach out. You know, we actually had all of our teachers. It was a little late, but we definitely wanted to be able to communicate. We had all of our teachers in November call every kid who had an F. And that was specific to just, hey, what's going on? How can we fix this? We got a month left. And that's something that's pretty, I mean, we've never really done that before as a high school. So it's kind of a nice accomplishment, but you know, it's just, Scott, it's kind of that hard one.
This isn't a question, it's a comment. I'm excited to hear about the ACT scores because that was a concern I always had. Also, I guess I'm just curious because we went from a pretty differentiated by class math curriculum. I don't mean by age group, but I mean by what class they were in and things like that. Are we still doing any of that, or is it just everybody takes whatever it's called, level 1, let's say?
Talk about that modify and support piece. One of the worst ways we can modify, it's actually the old school term of tracking.
Right.
When we're putting, we
It
had that
definitely
math
was that. I know that.
we had, unfortunately, we were putting a lot of our kids, I think last year was about 80% of our freshmen were going into this remedial math class as freshmen. And that sounds great, and it's a good option for kids, but it puts them behind, right? And that's where we talk that state standard. The standard is, right, everywhere you go, everywhere, I mean, we all have the same standard of what we should be teaching. Unfortunately, Charles City kids were about, I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there, about a year or two behind in what we're asking our freshmen to do. And the modify versus support I talked to you about, Pat, everybody should be in the same math, right? Now we can support you different, right? We can help you. That's kind of like the goal area there of how can we get it, but everybody should be capable. That's that high expectation of the high outcomes for every kid. Just because you struggle with math, might need a little bit of help, doesn't mean you can't succeed in high levels of math, right? Doesn't mean you can't take Algebra 2. Doesn't mean you can't take this class as a freshman year. That's kind of that change we're trying to really push, because it is, right? I don't like to throw the tracking word around there, but it is. Like, if we look, those kids were forced to basically never have the opportunity. Let's say freshman year, they figured math out, they're already behind. They're never gonna have the opportunity to take a high level math class in their high school. That's unfortunate, right? That's not fair to that kid. That's not the right move. And that's why we had to adjust.
And what I'd say to that too is we sometimes fall into a practice that I call, "Ah, bless your heart." It's that we pat you on the head and say, "I feel bad for you. I feel bad for you, the issues in your life. I feel bad for home life or situations or different things." And it's all bless your heart. And then here's the problem. We go from being a hospital to a hospice. We want to be a hospital where we help people get healthier and well, not a hospice where we just make you comfortable before, you know, things go poorly for you or badly. And I'm not trying to make light of that. That is an actual, you know, kind of theme that we use. And so when you have a student that comes from a tough family life with low structure, no parents at home, basically raising themselves and raising their younger siblings, right? And they're struggling to show up to school on time, and you feel bad. You feel bad that they had to feed their brothers and sisters, but the truth is you can't lower the expectations. They need higher expectations. They don't need less structure, they need more. Because they're not getting that structure at home, they need even double amounts of structure at school to compensate for the structure they're lacking. And it's a little counterintuitive. You know, it's like, you know, when you're sliding in your car, you turn into the slide. It's counterintuitive. Kids in this situation need more rigor, higher expectations, more structure. And the research backs that. You check what's called the 90-90-90 research, Pat, and I know you're familiar with that, of high poverty schools. It's schools with 90% poverty that had 90% minority, but had 90% proficiency. And what consistently happened in these schools, and this is older research from the early 2000s, was high expectations for all kids. Nobody was saying you can't do it. You can learn at high levels.
And our goal all along is to give these kids options after high school. If we treat them with lower curriculum, lower classes, lower expectations, what are they going to do after high school? They're not going to succeed. Right? And that's the worst thing we can do for poverty. That's the worst thing we can do for any kind of ethnicity. That's the worst thing we can do. So it's high expectations for everybody on this campus or in this district.
I agree. I think it's wonderful that this is the direction we're going. I also can feel probably the pain that some people are going through and the difficulty. And so is there something going, I mean, I know there is, but for everyone, what's happening to, so kids are going to have opportunity gaps in there just by the way like math was laid out before. So how are we supporting them to fill in those opportunity gaps?
So if we look at math specifically, they've spent a lot of time looking at the curriculum expectation or what that state standard expectation is and where they were at and bridging that. So it's not a dump into a completely new environment. It's a dump into like an abridged environment.
Okay.
That was so up there. We've had to play, it's like, obviously we had some kids that weren't successful in math this semester. Not really that far off, right? We typically have some kids, but we've actually put them straight into another math class. We started them over right away second semester. And Pat, we don't offer first semester classes second semester. And the math department just said, I think these kids just should go right back into it because they've already started to click. And that's something I talked a lot about this math curriculum. And a lot of the kids told me the first month, right? I got a lot of kids going, this is miserable. This is hard. We don't like it. A month later, all of a sudden they're like, no, we really like it, right? It kind of clicked. And that's what they all talked about. Once they kind of got it, once they got where it was going, it was easy. The hard part is it just took some kids a little longer. And that's where we're going to go, right? Because we don't want those kids to be behind either. So that's why we're going to have them jump right back into it right now. They've already started. That was so they can get on it. We're actually working through summer. Kind of working with kids who are interested and say, hey, just come take the B section of the second semester in the summer. Next year, it's like it never happened, right? It never even happened. We can retake it. So the transcript gets adjusted, boom, right? We're back to where we were and we're on grade level, something we haven't been able to say in math for a while.
And I think the biggest thing that kids are feeling is the amount of personal effort and attention that it really is required in order to pass this class. And Brian, you can talk about it, like you can't just show up. That doesn't work. And so kids are feeling that.
And we're not, right? I mean, not gonna lie, there's no reassessments. There is no notes on your test. And that's a hard one, right? That was something that I felt like we really relied on. However, how are you do you ever truly learn it if you're just copying it off your notes as you take the test? You're not learning.
It's not an authentic skill.
Yep.
We were talking to one of our grads from last year that is now at Wartburg and says that was the worst thing you could have done to me. I am now going to these college level classes and I can't use my notes. I thought you could use your notes, and like, no, that's not how it works. And I'm going to make a bold statement here, and I know some people may disagree, but I've heard this comment to me. Well, Mike, because I will tell you, we're talking with a lot of parents. I talked to 2 different parents over a Christmas break for over an hour each. I know all of us did, because we're trying to help navigate this new territory, help them metabolize it. I heard this. Well, Mike, if they work really, really hard, they should automatically pass. And this is what I've kind of pushed back on this. One, that's not the real world. I've known people that have worked unbelievably hard in their jobs and sometimes still failed. It's not only working hard, you've got to be competent at it. You've got to be able to do the work. Second of all, I would argue this, and Brian, I think, could attest to this in our math class. If we had any kids that were worked hard all the way from the beginning to the end, they passed.
Absolutely.
They passed because they got it and they did the work. Here's what we didn't do. I knew of some kids that worked hard for 1 month. They pretty much didn't do the work. all semester, and then got really close to the end, and about end of November, Thanksgiving, they realized they're failing and they worked really hard. And we heard this complaint, well, they work really hard. Well, how long? The last 3 or 4 weeks. And I know as the CEO of this organization, I would not allow any employee to do a subpar job than do, work hard for 1 month and then still pass a performance evaluation. I say that as an employer because I know all employers think like I do on that. I know we had kids that were maybe 1 percentage point away from passing that worked hard for 1 month. And as hard as it was for us to give them 5 points extra credit to get them across the line, would have handicapped that child for the rest of their life. And that is not something we are in the business of doing. We've got to teach them. And here's what I keep preaching to everybody. It is tough love. It seems hard, but it's done with love. We love our kids. And some of that is sometimes we have to give tough love. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I just want to commend you for, and the math department, I guess, for knowing that those kids needed to take it again and for offering stuff during the summer. And I hope you don't have to do it again next year. I mean, that it's a learning process, and I think that's probably helpful, but I also know we don't want to be enablers, to that not working. Yeah.
Balance it.
This was an excellent presentation. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for the
Especially
updates.
as a parent of, middle schoolers and one of them taking algebra. So I've had experience with the new math curriculum and yeah, it has been hard. And I think, I've talked to Joe about this. I think it was in a way kind of a perfect storm with COVID. We were already moving in this direction and then we had COVID and, so it's added another layer of challenges, I think, for some students who maybe don't do as well staying on task when they're home and they're not in the classroom. But, it's going to be a tough year, but I think this is good for our kids and our students, that we are, even through this, we're not saying, oh, well, it's, COVID's happened and this is, it's a hard year, so maybe let's take it easy. We're still moving ahead with what we knew we needed to do. And, I'll admit it's hard. It's hard as a parent to watch your kids struggling with things when maybe it hasn't been a struggle before, but I know it's better for them in the end. So better for all of our students in the end. So I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing.
To be very clear, we talked a lot about, is this the year we should do this? And kind of what really put us on is, if we wait another year, we're just hurting more kids. Not that it was like detrimental, fatal errors, but we have a lot of kids that could go way higher, right? I always say we undersell our kids way too often. There's no reason in Charles City our ACT score should be as low as it is. And it was just time. We had to do something. We had to do it now. And I know COVID didn't help that. But at least we're moving, right? At least we know what we're doing today is still better than what we were doing last year.
If the work is ever not hard, it's the wrong work.
That's right.
But I think that's we always need to be challenging. We always need to be challenging. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Be challenging.
Like John Kennedy said, we do not do it because it's easy. We do it because it's hard.
Or Tom Hanks said, "A League of Their Own," and it was wasn't hard everybody to do it. Hard makes it great. So. Thanks, guys.
So can
Thank
we
you,
say
Joe.
also there's no crying in math?
Oh, I don't think that's accurate, though.
I
It
cried.
might be that. I'll keep Terry around. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. Okay, on to agenda item number 11, the 2021 school calendar.
As we talked about last time, we, after getting input from our staff and our students, realizing that it would be nice, it'd be really wise for us to have a little bit more time to just get the high quality digital content going and getting some more training and work on that. So our calendar revision has 2 additional days built in that, again, we don't have to make these up at the end of the year. We have them built into our calendar with extra hours to allow more professional work and with our staff. So we have, it would be a public hearing tonight on that, and then for your consideration to amend the agenda or amend the calendar.
Terry, do we need to do anything for the public hearing?
Well, we should ask for oral comment. I guess I will make, we had no written comment received prior to the meeting.
Well, at this moment, Mr. Fisher and I are the only people in this room, so I don't think we have any oral comment here.
Okay.
Making sure I don't see anybody else. And Mr. Fisher found his ring, so he's going to be saved by his wife.
Okay. He can go home then tonight.
Yeah, it's actually my second one, so I should probably get this one resized.
All right, let's move on to agenda item number 12, the 2020-21 school calendar revision. So this would be the motion to modify the calendar.
I move to approve the 2020 school calendar revision as presented.
A
Second.
Second, to approve the 2020-21 school calendar revision as presented. Any other discussion?
And can we just state what are the 2 days, just so we're saying it since it's not in the agenda right here, for those who maybe don't have that exhibit in front of them?
January 15th
Yeah.
and February 1st.
They're highlighted on the calendar. If you have,
Yep.
if you have.
And we have given updated notice to the community, so no surprises.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 13, Families First Coronavirus Leave.
As you may be aware, the Families First Coronavirus Leave Act was part of the CARES Act that was approved last year at the federal level, and it required all employers in the United States to, by law, provide 80 hours of a leave for employees if they were afflicted with COVID. And there's some different specifics around that, which, are on the Department of Labor website. But basically, it's to give a cushion and some leave insurance for people that may, be afflicted with COVID. It expired December 31st, of 2020, and it was not renewed in this most recent CARES Act that came out. We received word from our legal counsel that it's expired, and we had 2 options. One, we could just stop it as of December 31st, or we could actually extend it out to March 31st. Had a consultation with our association leadership. So thanks Julie Parker, the support staff, Sarah Downing with the teacher association, and then also talked to our senior leadership team. And it was consensus that the wise thing to do for our family is to go ahead and extend it out to the 31st. There's no real extra cost for us on this, but it just gives the extra assurance to our family that they will continue to have a leave to help protect them during this COVID season as we await the vaccination. And just a reminder to our family and our staff too, that they still have all their sick leave and all their other leaves that we have. And again, the board back in last spring donated 500 days of sick bank leave that if our employees were to get afflicted with COVID and end up in the ICU or something like really tragic where they're out of work for a long time, they would have leave options to make sure that they wouldn't run out of leave and possibly be in a real tough financial situation. But we all just felt this was what best for the family, and in the spirit of no surprises. So my recommendation to the board is to go ahead and extend this to March 31st, 2021.
Which is as far as we can extend it.
It's as far as we can extend it per the law. So at that point, we don't have any other provision to extend it further.
Any discussions, questions from the board members?
I think this is great. It's the right thing to do, and I think we all know that. And I absolutely, let's support our staff and just the right thing to do. I appreciate I'm assuming Mike spearheaded that, but reaching out to find out that we could extend this the way that we have. So
I agree.
So I'll make a motion to approve the continuation of the Families First Coronavirus Leave Act through March 31st, 2021 as recommended.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the continuation of the Families First Coronavirus Leave Act through March 31st, 2021 as recommended. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
The DOT agreement.
This will be Terry.
Okay, this was in our packets.
Yep,
Terry,
we spoke about this last meeting. Since then, the DOT has come up with an agreement that's acceptable to our attorney. It gives no rights to property. It just allows the DOT to work on our grounds while they're building Highway 18. And they will be doing sidewalk work. They did say that they're going to be working on it in 2021 and then be completed before the students come back to school.
in 2021, so for fall, they'd be finished by fall.
Right.
And it looks like they're gonna pay us $200, is that correct? Or we're paying them $200?
They pay us $200.
So what are they paying us $200 for the sidewalk?
That, I'm not sure what the payment is for.
I mean, we'd take it for sure, that's great. I just have never
Sure.
gotten any money out of the DOT, so I almost want to frame it.
Is it for permission to be on our property? I see if they, whatever they damage for grass or whatever, they will replace or put back into a pre-existing condition.
Right.
Maybe it's just goodwill.
I'm thrilled to see the DOT paying us, which is just fantastic, so that's great. Okay, any
And
questions?
this is just at the corner there, by, I don't know, the F and 4th Avenue there, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Lot-
this agreement works on, based
It's-
upon the picture?
Yeah, well, based upon the picture and the description, lot 14 and block 16, second Hart Par edition.
Okay. We haven't heard anything from them about the east end of the property yet.
I haven't.
We haven't. The last I've heard was from Steve Deers, because it is a joint city / DOT project, because it is Highway 18, but it's also, a city road as well. At one time, there was discussion about a redesign of, what is that, 5th Street, how it hooks into 18 there, and cleaning up that curb, and it might impact some of our property lines. I don't know that they've made any final decisions. I haven't heard any more on that yet.
Okay, because that conversation or those drawings were in the initial workshop that the DOT had with the city a number of months ago to redesign what you're talking about, 5th Avenue and 18, and those drawings made it look like they would end up utilizing some of our property on the east end there to redesign that. But if we haven't heard anything and we're just moving forward with F and 5th Avenue, then I'll move to approve the Iowa DOT agreement for work on private property as presented.
A second.
Motion and a second to approve the Iowa DOT agreement for work on private property as presented. Any other discussion? Did you guys? You guys hear me?
Oh,
Yeah.
you must have cut out. I didn't hear you.
Do
Or
we have
I
any
cut
other
out.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 15, the modified supplemental aid amount for at-risk dropout.
So we have to put in our application by the 15th of January. It's due, this application is for the 21-22 school year and is to request the modified supplemental amount for our at-risk programs. On the agenda, I put down what those programs were in the past. However, the application is for the money. We're not tied to any specific program, but just for the record, the programs that were funded through this supplemental amount were the Juvenile Court Liaison Officer, Intensive Guidance Services, School-Based Youth Services, School Within a School, Carrie Lane Alternative Program, Math, Reading, and Science Workshops, our Intervention Room, Behavior Interventionist, and the Summer School and Before and After School programs.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions for Terry on this?
I move to approve the 2021-2022 at-risk dropout request for modified supplemental amount totaling $476,408 as recommended.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the 2021-22 at-risk dropout request for modified supplemental amount totaling $476,408 as recommended. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 16, the high school section for M roof bid.
And I want to clarify to the board too, I work with Jerry Mitchell on this. This is not any of the area that would be impacted by future high school renovations. It's not part of the plan. So it's not something that we would do and then later we would lose or be demoed or something. This is part of our facility that would still be intact with this roof even after a high school renovation. So it is for the long term.
Isn't this, we've started in the last couple of years, and I think we're continuing to move east on the cafeteria and the shop areas with roof replacements.
Yep, absolutely. What the area is, I'm going to look at my exhibits to make sure I'm telling the right thing. Yes, because here's what we are avoiding really much as possible, to avoid any roofs on the circles. Those would be the places where we'd have major work, that some major things redone. It has what's called an Alumilite roof on there, so it is getting into life there. But we feel strongly anything over the library, anything over the CT wing, the old high school gym, that's all infrastructure that would be there even after a high school renovation. So we feel strongly with that. But that's why, as President Mack said, with the clock's ticking on conversations, because the roof on the circles will only take so many more years. So, but this is not any of that. It is, like you said, on the shop area.
And Mike, when we request bids for, oh, I see, it says right there, 2 bids. Okay. Is that pretty typical that we request it 2 at least, or do we usually get more than that we have to choose from?
Terry, do you want to walk the board through kind of the sealed bid process, how we do that?
Well, so Jerry, for this level of repair, so in the band under 135,000, all the requirement is that we receive at least 2 bids to review. So Jerry went out and sought out those bids, and the low bid was from Midwest Roofing Company.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and odds are in the past, he might have sent out paperwork or the bidding process to 6 to 8 or even 10 different companies. And I don't want to speak, but I mean, historically in the past, he would send out documentation to a lot of companies, and then whoever bids, whether they're busy or they decided not to even bid or whatever. I mean, that's individual companies' prerogative, but it would be interesting to find out how many, not that I want to delay the process, but sometime in the future, how many different companies did he send out the bid paperwork to? Because I'm tend to think that it's way more than two.
And Scott, I want to even tie that back to our presentation about teaching and learning. We're so short, even in a pandemic, and even with some of our unemployment high, but a lot of the unemployment numbers we're seeing as we talk to workforce development is more tied like service industry, restaurant, things like that. But in construction and heavy manufacturing, you know, they are still short. They're short all the time. We are so short contractors. It's hard to find roofers. And now luckily we're still finding roofers, but to get multiple bids. And we also see oftentimes the bids aren't as competitive as they used to be because they're so darn busy. And you know, the busier they are, the more they can charge. And that's what we keep saying, especially the worst ones for us, honestly, are asphalt. It's hard to get like an asphalt driveway because the asphalt companies are so busy, they don't want small piddly work, they want huge work. And the other one's tuck pointing. Tuck pointing is so busy on masonry work, it's hard to even get a quote right now. And so it's kind of interesting seeing, it goes full circle. The lack of high quality people to be in those industries that are very talented, which comes back to us as an educational institution, shows we even see in our bids on how we've got to do a better job of preparing even more people for the workforce for this type of work. And there's good money to be made by people in these roles.
Good point.
The low bid was under budget too.
Well, didn't you say, Terry, that if it's under a certain dollar amount, that they only have to get 2 bids?
Right.
Well, I will make a motion to approve the bid from Midwest Roofing Company for $62,800 as recommended.
Second.
Motion in a couple seconds to approve the bid from Midwest Roofing Company for $62,800 as recommended. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 17, the Vinstra and Kim Professional Services.
This is a quote for us to get engineering services for our track. We are redoing the track this summer. It is well past due. We probably should have done it a year ago, but we held off for a year with everything else going on with other projects. And so we had that budgeted in. So this is us getting professional engineering services to get that going. Our plan is to get it going as soon as track season is over. And so we're beginning that process here tonight.
I have a question about this particular contract. We did a project last year, and we had some issues with budget substantially with an engineering firm. Do we have some safeguards in place to ensure that we don't have that situation again?
You know, we had that same conversation, and I don't know about safeguards in place per se, but what I'll say, here's the big thing. There was a major personnel change in that office.
Okay.
And that was the change. There was a key retirement.
Okay.
And now the person there is actually very, very awesome to work with. In fact, the person that is there now was the one that helped us resolve that previous issue.
Right.
And so that was our piece there.
It's got a really wide swing. We're going for 25,000 to 200,000.
Terry can speak a little more to that on how these professional services contracts work, just in terms of engineering, because it is kind of on a pro-rated and I would say a la carte, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, as you engage, then they charge more.
Yeah, absolutely. Terry, do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, so our compensation to them for the work, you know, part of that is going to be just a flat lump sum, $5,500 for the topo survey, field recon, design and preparation of bidding and contract documents, plans and specifications, and assist with the bid advertising and letting. Then as far as construction services, that would be paid based on an hourly rate. They're estimating 7,500. But we would, part of the work that they would do is to help us let the bids out for the work and select the contractor, and then help us manage the project after we have selected the contractor.
So what our compensation to Veenstra and Kim is essentially $13,000.
Yeah,
The 55 and the 75. And then the 25 to 200 is their estimated cost of resurfacing and repair.
yeah, I'm not sure what the 25,000 is.
One of the contract says, basically at the end of it, it says it could be between 25,000 and 200,000. The reason I'm asking is just a really wide swing there. And I just
Yeah.
want to make sure we're somewhat accurate in these estimates that we're getting from companies, right? Because like if you look at the roofing estimate, right, we were within a couple $1,000s, which seems very reasonable to me.
Here's the big swing on the track. We have to redo the rubber surface.
Right.
That's a no-brainer. What we don't know is the status of the asphalt underneath it.
Okay.
And we won't know till we peel off the rubber. So that's why we have to budget for that. We could get in there and the asphalt's fine and maybe just need some patching or some hot mix patching, and then we could go back over the new rubber surface. There is a chance too that we have to rip out the whole thing. And we budgeted for that as well, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And unfortunately, we keep asking, how do we know? Well, you just don't know until they peel the old track off. So we will see here in May.
Doesn't it look like we have 2 layers now that we have to remove? Did I?
Because we looked at, could we just resurface what we had or repair what we had? And it's kind of like a roof. You can only go with so many layers of shingles. So the good news is once we do this, we'll be good for quite a while, probably another layer, at some point.
Right. And we just don't know what the foundation looks like underneath the 2 or 3 layers that we're going to remove before we put new on.
We just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best there. Again, we're budgeted for worst case scenario.
Right.
But boy, if a best case scenario happens, we have more margin for other things, other projects.
Well, my questions and concerns have been alleviated. Any other questions from board members?
I'll move to approve the professional engineering services agreement with Veenstra and Kim Inc. for work on the high school running track project as recommended.
I'll second.
Motion in a couple seconds to approve the professional engineering services agreement with Veenstra and Kim Inc. for work on the high school running track project as recommended. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 18, South Grand Urban Renewal Area Resolution.
There's some continued development on the old Jefferson site with development. And so that's exciting for our community. I believe they're going to get the rest of the housing field done there. And so this is just some of the formalities the city of Charles City is asking us to understand and be aware of. Terry, do you want to fill in some of the specifics on that as well?
Yeah, so the city has to, they're looking to recoup their cost, and it's like, their cost is like 420,000. So over the 16-year TIF period, they would recoup part of the cost. So it would affect our property tax collections over those years.
So Terry, if I paraphrase, so what you're saying is the city is asking us to acknowledge that we're going to get less property taxes in those areas over the period of this TIF, I don't know what the proper term, TIF time. And we're basically, with this resolution, we're understanding and agreeing to that, right?
Right.
How much
And
money are we talking?
Anybody else in that area as well, like I think Nyack as well.
We say no, what happens? Terry, do you know, if we were to say no, what would happen?
Well, I'm sure that they want to and need to recoup their cost. And I guess if the project is important to Charles City, I guess we'd have to go back to them and negotiate it. But I can't really answer that question.
Okay. And our stance has always been that typically if TIF is well regulated and has a good stewardship by our city government, which in my opinion does, that's why it has my recommendation for approval. It's actually good for all of us. We have a housing issue in this town, and there's not enough housing stock. So to increase our housing stock, we think is a good thing. So at the end of the day, if we increase housing stock and we get more kids, that would offset some of the tax revenues. And again, how Iowa School Finance Formula works, that some of the offsetting loss of property tax income would be recouped through state aid as well. So at the end of the day, our bottom line is still protected, but it is less property tax proceeds that we are taking in, which is always a concern. So something to think about. But in terms of cost benefit, in my opinion, it's a better benefit than it is a cost to us at this time.
So would we have to apply to the state in some way to get back the difference, or is it just an automatic part of the formula?
This is all locally administered TIF,
Okay.
so it really has anything to do with the state. What happens is just how Iowa School Finance Formula works is how much of your per pupil, how much money we get. There's a fraction of it that comes from state aid, a fraction of it comes from property taxes. Well, we still get that. Oh gosh, what's our number this year? It's always have it written down. It's 60. It was like 6930. $6,930 we get per student. A portion of that comes from property tax, portion of that comes from state aid. There's less property tax coming in, just more state aid that has to backfill that. But that being said, when we're talking a $20 million budget, even this is over several years is a fraction of that.
Questions, board members?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution with the city of Charles City to amend the South Grand Urban Renewal Area to encompass the Parkside housing development.
A second.
And a second to approve the resolution with the city of Charles City to amend the South Grand Urban Renewal Area to encompass the Parkside. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 19, the audit report for fiscal year 1920.
So, yeah, the audit was completed. Like we commented, or I commented at previous meetings, the numbers are the same as that were presented in the certified annual report. So I'm not going to go through those, but there were 3 findings in the report. One of them had to do with the certified budget exceeding in 2 areas, the support services, and that was due to a higher special ed consortium expense. And the other expenses due to the athletic complex. When we certified in April of 2019, we had more, or we budgeted more athletic complex expenses in FY19 and less in FY20. It was a matter of timing. Overall, the athletic complex budget, as we've gone through at previous meetings, we were on budget. The other 2 comments had to do with certified enrollment and supplemental weighting on enrollment. In the certified enrollment, we added 2 students, and in the supplemental weighting, there was a negative 0.24 students. So those three comments were encompassed in the report, but otherwise, there were no issues.
I move to approve the 6/30/20 audit report as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the 6/30/20 audit report as presented. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 20, the financial report for December 2020.
So just a couple of things. The dental balance, you might notice, has improved for 3 months now, so that's good news. Hopefully it continues that direction. And the general fund revenue and expenses are in line with what we're projecting at this time of year. Lastly, on Thursday, there's going to be a webinar from the state regarding the COVID relief supplemental application, which they're already given out allocations to schools for the second phase of COVID, which is a lot more than our first wave. And they actually give us more time to spend it. The time frame to spend it is September of 2023.
Oh.
So,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Do we know
They
how
do.
much we're receiving?
it's approximately 1.4 million.
Do we have any requirements on how we can spend it or any strings attached, I suppose?
Yeah, the requirements are the same. They did add like 3 additional uses of the funds, 2 of which are in the area of facility repair and maintenance and air flows and, you know, keeping students safe.
Okay. That's great. I think that's fantastic. We got extra time, so it's not a rush. This time we can do a little more planning around how we can best utilize that money. That's great.
Yep.
Any other questions for Terry?
I'll make a motion to accept the December 2020 financial reports as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the December 2020 financial reports as presented. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 21, the consideration of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda items as listed.
A second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items as listed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 22, big ideas. All right, who's got the first really big idea?
I just really appreciate the continued conversation that we've had with presentations from, you know, Joe, for example, and then tonight from Brian, Joe, and Mike. You know, letting, I guess, more communication to parents and students that the reason why we are doing what we're doing, and even if students and parents are feeling like maybe this year has been a struggle so far, or they're frustrated, that knowing why we're doing this, that we want to see our students succeed and be better when they leave Charles City Schools. I think that's the biggest piece, is understanding the why behind it, so that, you know, the students can be more on board with it, knowing that we're doing it for a reason, and it's because we care about them and we want to see them succeed.
I agree. I thought the presentation was very good, and I hope that parents, you know, do listen to this and talk to people if they are feeling frustrated about it, and then support the work that we're doing, knowing that in the end it is going to be better for their children.
And I forgot to share this tonight. We are doing another information campaign. The Donovan Group, who we work with some public relations piece, we're pushing out more information, very targeted from our focus groups with our parents. What are the information that our parents and kids need? We're also looking at producing like a short video that would actually take them inside a high school math classroom to show them what it actually looks like. And so kind of provide some clarity. So you're gonna see even more communication. It was about our vision, and now we're getting really even more narrow about our tough love and high expectations around rigor.
As long as we continue to show compassion and we have the availability to give people any extra assistance they might need.
I was in a high school math classroom doing an observation today, and I saw a teacher-led review session, you know, with the entire class. And so we're making those adjustments as we go. So yeah, absolutely, Scott, we agree.
And the equity part that we continue to talk about at the board table, and that we heard Jenna give conversations about, and I made comment about the school board convention that was virtual this year, and that we are leaps and bounds above other districts. So let's continue that good work.
Or also, Scott, speaking of that, there is an equity workshop that's free through the IASB. If you last Friday's update or whatever, if anybody
That's upcoming.
Yes, it's in February. I signed up
Oh.
for it.
That's a great time for Scott.
Yeah, no, I barely have time to sleep in February, so I probably won't be watching it.
Well, since it's free, if I get access to it afterwards, I'll share it with you.
Thanks. Maybe in May
Yeah.
we'll talk about it.
There's another workshop too in February through the IASB.
Yeah, I don't really care about that, but
Don't
you can
bother
share. You
him.
can share it with the rest of the people. I don't
Well,
have
I signed
time.
up for two, so
I think another big idea is Mike's managing whether we can go back or not, and, you know, keeping everybody cool.
I think another big point to make too is the decisions that we're making in terms of some of the repairs that need to be made. You know, we're being smart about that, and we have a plan, and we're making sure that we're using our resources to fix the things that we absolutely need to right now, but also like Mike and Josh just, you know, talked about tonight, understanding and knowing that there are pieces to that we're going to need to start tackling probably sooner than later, specifically in regards to the high school. And, you know, we're aware of that, and we know that conversation needs to be had. But yet we also understand the repairs that need to be made, and just making sure that we're using those funds to repair things that we're not going to turn around in a few years and say, no, now we're going to change this.
Right.
Maybe that wasn't money that was well spent. So appreciating the fact that we're being financially responsible with the district's money and with the community's money, and when we're looking at those projects.
Excellent. Anything else before we move on? Okay, on to agenda number 23, enrollment summary.
You know, I don't have I don't have the total updated numbers because we had so many kids enrolling last week. I think we took 10 kids at the high school alone. And the rumor was they all had brothers and sisters, but they were still getting intake. We also probably had some that moved away over Christmas. But we were back at, I looked at my board before I left, it was 1544. So it was a good solid increase, but that 1544 that we had was absolutely not indicative of the ones that moved in. Some of the new ones that moved in were on that log, but some of them weren't. So I'm excited to see what February 1 has when we run it again, because I think it'll be even a little bit higher. But had some people choosing us over Christmas. That was good news.
Were those school to you or face-to-face or just kind of a mix?
No, all over. I met a young man. It was great. He's a junior high school. He had several brothers and sisters. Mom moved up here for a family situation. He was from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which actually I know where that is because it wasn't far from where my parents lived around Elizabethtown. So I was talking to him and he's going to graduate here. So that was just kind of it was an eclectic mix. We had people from all yonder parts moving to Charles City. So.
Mine kind of dropped just a little bit. Like you
Well,
were
that
from
ain't the Kentucky. I mean, that's the southern Iowa in me. So that's a little different.
All right. Agenda item number 24, we have a couple upcoming important dates. On the 22nd, we have a facilities committee at 7 a.m. And on the 25th, we have our next school board meeting for January at 6:15. It will be here. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming and we really appreciate seeing you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
I-
Thank you, everyone.